get on the float plane?
Soon the weather clears up. Yep. I'm R-E-D-Y, ready.
It's September 22nd and we were finally rolling out. A few years back, after a successful elk hunt in Idaho, Dad and I made a pit stop for a warm meal and a glass of whiskey. Somewhere in our conversation, I asked him what his bucket list hunt would be, and without hesitation, he said he'd like to hunt moose someday. Fast forward 2 years later. After our hunt being delayed a year, we are finally making the 1,500-mile road trip to the North Country, northern British Columbia. Today we are getting picked up by the float plane. After takeoff, it became apparent that the weather was much worse in the mountains where we were headed. With little visibility and heavy winds blowing the plane around like a kite, Dad and I would both agree that we weren't sure if we were even going to make it to camp. When that float plane finally touched down, there was a huge sigh of relief, and I could see that Dad was excited, and also needed to blow off some steam with a little Black Velvet and BS. The next morning we started off with breakfast, horse packing, and a 10-mile ride back to a basin we thought would for sure produce the first morning bull moose. After a few hours of glassing, we turned up a pretty nice bull that we wanted to get a closer look at. After slipping into about 200 yards, it didn't take long and I heard the safety go off on Dad's rifle.
Yeah, we're not gonna shoot him. Not gonna shoot him, I don't think so. Just hold off.
This is a nice bull, but young. We can tell by the length of his bell and immature body size. He will be a nice bull in a year or two. Day 2, we woke up with fresh legs and high spirits. After a few cups of coffee and a hot breakfast, we saddled up and headed out. This time we were headed back to a basin that I shot my wolf in a couple years ago. Little did we know, something was waiting for us at the end of the valley. It didn't take long and we spotted a shooter. Getting within range wasn't going to be easy through all the willows and being exposed. We quickly made a game plan and began our stalk. As we made it to the right spot, we quickly spotted the bull at 250 yards. After waiting this bull out for hours of wind, rain, and snow, the bull never presented us with a shot. Nightfall was on us and we knew it would be a long 4-hour horseback ride back to camp in the dark. The next morning we decided to sleep in a little, take a short ride to the lakes behind camp and do some calling to see if we could catch something on the move. It didn't take long and we realized that we were in for a day of fighting a blizzard and no moose activity. So we decided to head back to camp. The walls of this old hunting cabin sure do tell a story about the good old times. Decades of different guides, outfitters, and hunters alike, doing what they do best. Pursuing big game in some of the most rugged mountains in the world. Day 4. This was it. We were headed back into the basin after that bull we never got a shot at. As soon as we reached the end of the valley, it didn't take long and we turned up a bull. After about 2 seconds, I found the bull in my binos and it was a monster. It's go time. The bull was headed into a draw with 2 cows, so we knew we could get him cornered. Once we got into position, it was a waiting game. This bull was old and alive for one reason. He was smart. After calling and raking for multiple hours, the cows busted out and the bull was holding tight. As we got ready, I made the biggest rookie cameraman mistake. The bull stepped out, and in my own excitement, I forgot to hit the record button. Seeing the look on my dad's face when we walked up on his moose, that was a check off of my own bucket list.
Holy shit. Oh.
This team effort produced a northern British Columbia Boone and Crockett monster Canadian moose. That thing's a showstopper. And Dad couldn't be more proud.
Oh.
A few hours of pictures and breaking this bull down, we had yet another long ride back to camp in the dark. That thing is a monster, dude. What do you think about this moose hunting?
It's hard work.
Yeah.
It's not for the faint at heart. Or the old man that aren't in shape. Yeah, awesome.
You ever think you'd be up here hunting moose?
Nope. No, thank you, son.
Yeah, you're welcome. The next morning, we all slept in, had breakfast, and planned our day. Dad was going to stay back at camp and cut firewood, while myself and the guide would load up a pack string and go retrieve Dad's moose. Day 6, another day lost to weather. I am starting to get better at cribbage, even winning a few games here and there. Day 7, we decided to take a short ride behind camp after the weather settled and see if there was anything moving. After gaining some elevation, I spotted a pretty nice bull clear up in the alpine. This bull was going to be difficult to get above for a shot. After a quick game plan, we started to hike. Straight up, and we found ourselves above where we had seen the bull from afar. As night fell upon us, it was evident that the bull had slipped down into the timber. Time to head back to camp and make a game plan for tomorrow. The next day, we woke up to snow and heavy wind again. After trying to wait it out for a couple hours, I just couldn't help myself. I wanted to get out there even though the weather wasn't cooperating. I figured we could slow hunt through the timber, calling and following tracks to see if we turned something up. As we made our way around to a clearing we saw a bull in the night before, I had a feeling that something was going to happen today. After a few lonely cow calls, he started grunting. This bull came from out of nowhere and was on a beeline to our call. Finally, it all came together. Calling a mature bull moose into 15 yards doesn't get any better than that. A few celebratory beers later, Dad and I had both filled our moose tags. Oh, hell yeah. You called him right in.
Heck yeah.
I just couldn't help myself. Jake's been doing some cow calling and thought we heard a cow moose calling just up the meadow here, and about 30-40 minutes later this bull started grunting. Jake's sweet cow calling brought him right in to probably about 30-40 yards. Come right underneath of us, top broadside, and 30 miles there did a number on it. This is my second bull moose. Definitely not going to be the last. Once back at camp, Dad and I decided to have some father-son time fishing on the lake. This trip ended with me catching more fish and owning Dad at cribbage, but he got by far the biggest moose. Getting to experience a trip like this with my dad, I realized how blessed I was.
Lake trout for Tony. Last day of hunting, British Columbia. Fish number 2. About a minute after put her back in the water.
You got a white stripe down your back to match that white beard. This may have been his bucket list hunt, but it was mine too. I'm looking forward to the day I get to bring my son to this same camp and give him the same experience that I got with my dad.